Okay. Welcome to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I've been joined by the Honorable Councilor Jose Huizar, and I do believe that Councilor Englander might be tied up in budget and finance, but this does constitute a quorum. We have a few items on the agenda. I believe item 3, will be continued to this committee May 28th, and hopefully in council on June 18th. So that's the action number 3, a continuance to Plum on May 28th. Everybody has that cough. Okay. Then we have a director's report.
Good afternoon, council members. Michael LeGrand, Director of Planning. A few quick items to report. The City Planning Commission last Thursday unanimously approved the Sylmar Community Plan. It's one of the first community plans to go forward in the Valley in over approximately 10 years. So we're very happy to see the City Planning Department move forward with that community plan, as well as the unanimous approval by the City Planning Commission. There's a great deal of stakeholder input and process that took place over a number of years with the department staff, and the staff really did an excellent job of providing a bright future for Sylmar, for a livable community, and making sure that their vision and goals were adopted in that plan. And so we'll be happy to see that move forward through the legislative process in the Plum Committee this summer. So we're really excited.
So of the community plans in the pipeline, that takes care of number...
Yes, this is actually number 5.
Number 5.
Yes.
And then you have a few more
number 4 and number 5 will be here next, which is Granada Hills.
Okay, then you have a few others that have funding for completion in the next few years as well, right?
Correct. Another plan that's very important to one of our committee members here today, Councilman Huizar, who's been instrumental in not only helping us find funding for, but making sure we have positions available to work on this, is the Boyle Heights Community Plan, which is currently underway. And we just began, we restarted that plan, and we've gone through and utilized a lot of the expertise we got from the community members that have worked very closely with us for a number of years. Had a great kickoff meeting for that, and are really excited to be working in Boyle Heights to really make it a more livable place, and also enhance all the cultural resources we have there, and a really fantastic community in terms of engagement and caring and loving their community and having a great sense of pride. So we're really excited to be working with them and the councilman as we move that forward.
So you should stop, because you're going to give it all away, and by the time it comes around, you have to repeat it all over again. But good job. Anything else you'd like to add?
Just a few highlights. Our expedited processing section has been very busy recently. Just since January to June 2013, these are some of the projects that have been approved. A total commercial development reviewed by the ZAs in this expedited processing section is 775,000 square feet. In terms of housing starts, the total new number of units approved by the expedited processing section just from January to June of this year is 2,444 units, 411 single-family units, 195 are as a result of our small lot ordinance. In addition, new rental units were 388 units, of which 144 were affordable units. So just from January until June, this small unit within the planning department has approved 144 affordable housing units. So we're very excited. There's been a number of businesses opened. It's really some staggering information. I'll forward this to the committee members. But we're really excited to see that unit that's been in existence for about, I want to say 6 or 7 years now, really mature into something that's provided a great way to get affordable housing projects as well as market rate projects through the process in a quicker time with a lot of certainty. And I believe the first project was Avenue 26 in your district that was ever approved in this unit. So we're happy to see it grow.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you and the staff for their hard work. And hopefully as the economy gets better, we'll be in a different place and providing personnel and resources as time goes forward. But this is work that needs to be done now to stimulate that revenue And so I appreciate the hard work from the staff. So that being said, I'd like to invite our guest. We have one of the angels of the city who come and volunteer their time to serve on commissions. And today we have Miss Monique Chavova of the East Los Angeles Area Planning Commission, who is being nominated. I'd like to come on up. So I welcome you to the committee. Please give us your name.
Good afternoon, council members and Mr. Legrand. My name is Monique Chavoya.
Okay.
And,
I'll make sure I pronounce that correctly. It doesn't happen when I don't have my glasses. But welcome to the committee, and I wanted to first ask you if you could give us a little bit about your background in terms of your skill sets in fulfilling this function for this commission.
Sure. I'm very honored and to be appointed to the East LA Planning Commission, and I am a resident of Boyle Heights, and I've been so for the last 4 years, but had the opportunity to attend Smith College in Massachusetts, and then got my planning degree at UCLA, and for the last 6 years have been working with McCormick Baron Salazar as a project manager for housing, as a housing developer. And so I believe that my skill sets that I've earned over being, education and then also professional will be useful to the Planning Commission and being able to review projects and the appeals that go forward and things of that nature.
How would you address if someone in the public said, how could you be a commissioner and work for a housing developer at the same time? How would you address that question?
Of course, any projects that I have worked on or my firm is working on, I would recuse myself from those projects that if they go before the Area Planning Commission. But I would also address that through working for a housing developer, I've been able to review plans. I understand budgets and understand how the city works, and I think that that is beneficial to the Planning Commission for developers who are bringing large projects, and even those small homeowners who are coming for some type of entitlement or something of that nature, and being an advocate for those, and then also being objective. So I think that just because I'm a developer doesn't mean that I don't have skills or unable to be objective.
I never meant to allude that developers don't have skills, but I hear what you're saying. I feel your pain. If you wanted to, let's just say that tomorrow's your last day as commissioner. As you walk away, what type of footprint or impression or difference would you have wanted to make in the commission as a commissioner?
That's a good question, Councilmember. If I was to walk away tomorrow, and the lasting impression that I would want to leave first and foremost is that I did my best job, and that I served the residents of the city, both in looking at projects and seeing how the city can grow. I don't want to say holistically, but organically. That does serve its residents, and then also the vision of the city leaders. And that would be my legacy, I guess, if you can call it that. But walking away and knowing that would be what I would truly come away with. I think to be objective and to, different people come before the commission, and that can be a big developer who is very savvy, and it cannot be. It could be, a resident who is just, trying to get, or a business owner who's trying to get some type of entitlement. And I think that, as a commissioner, that's our job, to advocate and do the best always.
Thank you. Councilman Weezer, any questions or observations?
I just think you have a great qualifications to serve, and I'm happy that someone from Boyle Heights will serve in the East Area Planning Commission. It covers a lot of ground, and we've rarely got somebody from Boyle Heights, so I'm glad we have someone there so that provide that perspective. There's so much happening in Boyle Heights. You're familiar with the neighborhood. But you also qualified because you bring a number of, you work for a council office, you know how the city works, you work for a developer, you work for an advocacy organization such as ELAC, so I think you've seen a lot of different perspectives that come to bear in some of your decision-making that you will have to do. So I fully support this, and I want to thank you for your service. I know this takes time, takes energy, and I appreciate you giving up your time to it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to make the motion that we approve Monique to this position as a nominee, and that will be a recommendation of this committee. So that'll be the action of this committee. Congratulations. I think you have some ethics forms that need to be submitted before council.
Mr. Chair, we just got an update from Ethics Commission. They have been submitted.
Okay, great. So that being said, we look forward to seeing you in the council chamber.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. That does take care of item number one. Roberto, where does that take us?
The last item, Councilman, is the joint report to create the new Department of City Planning and Development.
Okay. So this is a continuation of sorts.
Yes.
We did act on a few items on that action, and we left a few for this session to go over the policy goals of this action. Could you or the staff review what's in front of us right now?
Yes. What happened was last week you acted on recommendations 1 through 5 of the joint report, and at this meeting you requested representatives, I believe, of DOT, engineering, and fire to come before your committee to express their concerns.
To put in perspective, I wanted to first thank the department heads who have been involved in this process for your hard work, because it shows that you're leaning towards efficiencies and accountability and trying to make the city a much more desirable location for investment, and that truly is appreciated. I felt compelled to ask the department heads that were not part of those preliminary discussions, at least with my committee, to come forward and give us their perspective, their opinion, and that has occurred, at least those who wanted to appear, and I appreciate their time. At this juncture, I want to invite either from Building Safety and Planning any statements as where we're at right now. We're going to be hearing from public comment. If you would like to present to us the context of maybe what some of these comments will be pertaining, if you felt comfortable doing that, or we can go right into public comment cards and then you can respond. So I'd like to give you that option.
I think it may be a good idea to go through public comment, then we can respond.
We'll do that. So we'll dive right into public comment cards. We have with us Don Frazier, I believe, from the Fire Department, Chief of Officer Association, and Will Wright. So Mr. Frazier, please come on up, followed by Mr. Wright.
Good afternoon, council members. Don Frazier with the Los Angeles Fire Department Chief Officers Association. Chief officers broadly support the concept that's being put forward. It's going to be an improvement for customers. But chief officers strongly argue that this is nothing more than a concept at this point. It is not a plan. The plan is to hire a consultant to actually develop the plan and implement later on. The problem that we have is that the mayor's office in the budget is taking the personnel in plan check, in fire department plan check, and moving them under building and safety. This goes against state law, against the city charter, and against the Los Angeles Municipal Code. So that's a non-starter unless that is backed out of the budget before chief officers can give their support to this concept. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Will Wright. I work for the American Institute of Architects, and we're here to pledge our support for this initiative. We do realize it's a concept that we look forward to being at the table as we work on the implementation of this restructuring. I'll just read a few of our priorities here. We are supportive of a departmental structure that reinforces a citywide long-range planning vision which better coordinates the elements of development, land use, circulation, and which collects the planning functions currently distributed amongst various departments so as to create a more cohesive and functional vision for the city. By setting the proper hierarchy of our citywide priorities, can ensure a successful Department of City Planning and Development, one that promotes a long-range vision for our city that supports the merits of design excellence and reasserts authentic placemaking as a top priority. Better outcomes for both individual projects and communities at large, where we are making places of consequence that are economically, socially, and environmentally vibrant. A simplified, predictable, and transparent entitlement process. And you have the letter with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. We have Wendy Sue Rosen, Mark Stratton, and Lois Becker.
Good afternoon. Last week when we testified, we were very gratified to see that 5 of the 7 recommendations moved forward, including Councilmember Englander, included in number 2 that we had a community advisory committee that would participate with the firm that's hired, the consulting firm. What we didn't really get to call out was the preamble mission of the Department of City Planning and Development that we're recommending. And since last week, we have submitted it to Planning and to Building and Safety to look at. Both gave input, and we have it back today before you. We believe it's very important to have preamble/mission statement. Right now, if you go on Building and Safety's website, their mission's there. If you go on Planning's website, their mission is there. We think going forward, if you're going to create a new ordinance for a new consolidated department, the mission needs to be there. So my council office is here today to support, and we've submitted the preamble, and we hope that you'll take a look and that you'll adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mark Stratton, ma'am?
Okay.
Yes, please.
I'm Lois Becker from Bel Air Skycrest, and I'm here to support the preamble to ensure that balance is built into this consolidated department from the word go. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is Mark Stratton here? How you doing?
I'm here to support the preamble as well as the committee that's going to be set up to advise in the period from July to February with all the stakeholders at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Johnny Utronich, Ann Williams, and Teresa Abram.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Johnny Utronich. I'm the president of the MCIA, the Inspectors Union. I represent all the inspectors and senior inspectors at Building and Safety, and I am an inspector for 26 years for this city. I believe you're moving too fast on this. There's a lot of things that are happening that we have no org chart. We don't have this is going to work. In the budget, the superintendent of building has been eliminated. That is where we drive our legal authority under the municipal code. That's who we work for. That has been eliminated. There has to be a clear line of who in all of this reports, there's no mention of employees or employee organizations of being stakeholders. We're not part of this process. We're the ones who have to make this work if it happens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association. As you know, CCA has been very engaged with the city on the issue of departmental realignment because it has such a direct impact on development and development reform, something that CCA has led the charge on for many years. And last week, we appreciate that you heard our concerns by incorporating CCA's specific requests into the realignment process and directing the departments accordingly. One of those requests was that you give assurances that the city continue its commitment to long-range planning, including comprehensive zoning code reform, the downtown development code, and updating the community plans. And we feel that issue bears particular emphasis today. The committee has already moved forward with several pieces of the realignment plan, and today we ask you continue with that momentum. In addressing staffing issues, please recognize that for developers, time really is money. At the same time, the industry is cyclical, so therefore we ask that you allow the city to meet this variable work demand by allowing it to pursue flexible staffing alternatives, such as outsourcing on a temporary basis. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As our speaker walks up, Sandy Sanchez, Tina Hassan, and Doug Arsenal. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Abraham from LADBS. Although I'm here, I am concerned about retaliation within my new department. But as an employee and a supervisor, I've read the report and I've listened to the many rumors. I'm not opposed to development reform. I believe as civil servants, we should be looking for better ways to do the people's business. However, this method in which the plan is being imposed without all the stakeholders' interests being considered, it concerns me. It seems to be being rushed through with very little details. Neither employees nor bargaining units have those details, and we don't know how it's going to impact employees. Last week, we kept hearing that the devil's in the details. I believe that. The devil is in the details. The report says that there's 250 overlapping positions. How will these positions be handled? Therefore, I respectfully request that this item be remanded to the Personnel Committee and not the Personnel Department through the budget process, as it was changed at the end of last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, council members, and thank you. My name is Doug Arson of the Valley Industry and Commerce Association. VICA supports in concept the City Department reorganization plan to streamline the development process. We have long advocated for this integration of the duplicative processes of the Departments of City Planning and Building and Safety, as well as the development functions of DOT, Fire, and Public Works. We recognize that the reorganization plan is only in its initial stages. As this process moves forward, we look forward to the inclusion of VICA and its strategic partners in the design of the Department of Planning and Development's organizational structure. As our members must interact with city staff on a daily basis, we want to ensure that this process truly accomplishes its goal of simplifying the process. We ask that implementation focus on the principles of accountability, better management of staff, and proper organizational authority structures. By working hand in hand with the business community, we hope the city can ensure more consistent development review, permit approval, and code implementation processes. VICA looks forward to this process moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandy Sanchez with the Building Industry Association of Southern California, Los Angeles Ventura County chapters. Our members, approximately 900 with their employees plus, we primarily work on home building, so we interface with the city on a day-to-day basis. Our concerns are outlined in our letter that we submitted last week, and we're glad that you're moving forward, and we don't want you to lose sight of those priorities that we've identified. I'm especially grateful that you're going to move forward with the advisory group, because I think that that will be where we could really articulate our daily concerns in greater detail, and we really look forward to the opportunity to work on that. We encourage the city to maintain a focus on the goal of establishing a clear set of expectations and the elimination of all the duplication. I think that's the biggest hurdle that our members talk about on a regular basis, is the duplicative conditions and issues that hinder the development moving forward. And that's the things that we really need to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Tina Hussein. I'm here representing the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce to support and acknowledge the important steps taken to increase efficiency, accountability, and certainty in the city's development process through the proposal of a new Department of City Planning and Developing. I want to encourage you to continue to work with stakeholders to address critical issues relating to implementation of the proposed new department. We ask that this committee direct the Departments of Planning and Building and Safety to incorporate the following recommendations into their next report and actions, as was outlined in a letter sent recently to Plum Council members. We would like to see a prioritization of case processing and sufficient staffing to meet timelines, an organizational chart to reflect a merger of the cultures and structures of distinct departments, identification of key process changes expected to produce performance improvements and elimination of redundancies, development of metrics to measure improvements, and a continued commitment to long-term planning efforts, especially the completion of a comprehensive zoning code update. We thank you for your efforts to create a potentially effective new department and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Whitney Blumenfeld to close.
Thank you. Whitney Blumenfeld here, representing Councilmember Bill Rosendahl. I am here to say that the council member is hoping that the implementing ordinance contain the preamble as has been distributed to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Whitney. Thank you. Okay. I have another card. Okay. Chava Danielson, come on up. Should just stay at the microphone.
Hava Danielson, architect, also a representative of the AIALA. I'm the chair of the Political Outreach Committee. We've been working on this issue and listening to both planning and building and safety present their concerns on this issue to us, and we are here in support, in full support of the consolidation of these two departments. We feel that it'll make the process much more effective downtown, and we also hope that it'll allow people to focus on the real work of planning and building and safety, which is making our city a more modern 21st century city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That does conclude public comment. And that terminates all the discussion on this from a public comment card. So if we'd like to address some of the points that came up that has been made by the public.
Mike LeGrand, Director of Planning. I'll do my best to address some of these. And Mr. Overham, if you'd like, please, you can join in with me if I don't cover something.
He's getting very comfortable there. I don't know.
One of the speakers mentioned the item regarding the fire personnel being a direct transfer of staff through the budget. Just to be clear, the mayor's proposed budget does direct those employees to be transferred to the new city planning and development department that's proposed. Those items of the direct transfers and the budget items aren't before this committee. Having said that, we have had multiple conversations prior to last week's meeting and since last week's meeting working with the fire department. And speaking as the planning director, I don't see any issues with having the fire personnel be handled through a memorandum of understanding. I think we can create the same efficiencies that would be realized whether or not it's an MOU or direct transfer due to some of the specific issues in the fire code. I wanted to share that with the committee. There was another issue from the community members that was raised regarding a preamble to any implementing ordinance. We feel that this language is very strong and meets not only the life safety mission of building and safety and the engineering principles, but also the livability and sustainability standards embedded in the planning department. I think this would be a great preamble to the implementing ordinance. With our mission statements, we do like to work with our staff to help create and develop those, so I would maybe not go so far as to say this would be replaced on the new webpage, but I think this is very similar to many of the missions found in the departments, but I definitely think as a preamble to any implementing ordinance, we'd be supportive of this language moving forward. Another union representative representing inspectors mentioned many of their concerns, and we feel that the life safety and the inspection functions currently taking place in building and safety are vital to growing this city and ensuring our compliance with our codes, and it's really the implementation arm of the vision that comes through the planning process. Once there's an action by council, all of the bargaining units would be arranged through the CAO, and I believe they're here to speak about that process if you'd like. But we will definitely be reaching out to the inspectors as well as all the staff and all the departments, including my own department and city planning, to further discuss the details as we develop them. The people who are best to help us find solutions to the issues that face a growing city are those employees. Our best resource is the brains and the knowledge and the collective experience of those employees. They will definitely be a part of this process and this plan moving forward through the consultant, but also through the leadership of these departments on an ongoing basis, and that won't end at any date, but that's a continuous cycle. There was also an employee from the Department of Building and Safety that mentioned concerns regarding an issue in the report. The report highlighted some functions that we have that are similar. For example, there's an IT department that supports our systems and our internet in the planning department, things like ZEMAS, PCTS. There's staff in the Department of Building and Safety that focus on PCIS, our permit clearance, as well as other applications. And what we're talking about in that report is the fact that when we merge these, if these two departments and the other areas are merged into a new city plan and development process, they'll create new opportunities where we have overlapping functions to have the staff work on things such as Build LA, that will be before this committee shortly, but also do things that we can do, provide a better level of service. In no way does this invoke any layoffs. There's no layoffs anticipated as any part of this. So for all the employees who may be listening or be here today, we'd like to assure you that the purpose of this is to improve the process and reduce redundancies and make it not only a better place to do business, but a better place to work in Los Angeles so people aren't overburdened with not being able to return phone calls, emails, being flooded with assignments because the resources may not be allocated appropriately, but being able to find efficiencies to make it a better place for the employees to do their jobs that they care so much about. I think a lot of what you're hearing, a lot of the concerns that we've worked out as this process moves forward very methodically and working with the employees. There was also some concern that from BIA that making sure that we would eliminate duplication in the process and making sure that the departments are working closely together. That's one of the major focuses of this report, and we're definitely dedicated to doing that, and we feel it's a very successful model to accomplish that. And the representative from Council District 11 also mentioned the preamble that was brought from Ms. Wendy Sue Rosen, and we are in support of that being added as a recommendation to a preamble of an ordinance which will be before the council at a later date if you choose to move this forward. And I can go through the action items before you when you're ready, or I can follow. Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions, and more for clarity. When you refer to the MOU with the fire department, the concerns that were raised, and correct if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the MOU will arrange for the functions being sought for this new entity to allow for the expertise of the fire department to be part of that decision-making process, but not necessarily remove them from the fire department staff. Is that accurate or?
Correct. That's a very good summary of the ideas. We've met with the Fire Chief Cummings, and a lot of the ideas are to co-locate staff to provide one point of contact to utilize our existing very successful case management model working with the fire department through an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, between this new proposed city planning and development department as well as the fire department. So we feel like the efficiencies can be gained, and the fire department's been a big supporter of development reform and reforming their review process, just like all the departments at the table have, and continuing down that path.
And then we speak to the notion of the superintendent, how you had one employee come and say, we need to know who we're accountable to. The superintendent and building and safety is the person who's focused on that. Now, according to the speaker, it has been eliminated. How will that accountability either be reinforced, or how do we make sure that accountability is not lost because of that supposed position being eliminated? Can either one of you respond to that?
Yes, I believe Mike, the Grand Director of Planning, the mayor's proposed budget does eliminate the general manager position currently in the Department of Building and Safety due to in the implementation of the budget by January 2014, this new proposed city plan and development process would be effectuated, so there wouldn't be need to have two leadership roles in that department. That position currently resides with the general manager of the Department of Building and Safety, so when that position was eliminated, that title was eliminated. That title is currently under the municipal code assigned by the mayor. So I think through the budget process that can be addressed, whether or not they create a separate position for a building official, or if that position is retained with the general manager position, or if it's added some other way through the budget process, but it's currently being reviewed in consultation with the CAO and the mayor's budget team, and I believe it'll be discussed at the council committee.
Mr. Overham, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, the speaker, I think, is correct in saying that the position is legally required. I think your items catch it, though, here in your item number 4 says that all the personnel matters need to go to the Personnel Department and Personnel Committee. So I think it can be clarified there. We have budget hearing next week, or Thursday. I think we have Thursday. So I expect it to be covered there. I talked to the mayor's budget team about that. They understand the legal requirement of having a building superintendent, a building official. So that issue will be addressed as part of the next steps. And the speaker is correct. It is a legally required position.
And just to correct, Councilman Englander had amended item number 4 to read the Personnel Department rather than committee, just to clarify.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, number 4,
Thank you.
I think it's covered by number 4 on your actions.
What's the difference? Procedurally and results-wise, what's the difference? Why would we want something to go Personnel Department versus Personnel Committee? Well, I made the motion to do the committee because I thought since we're providing some oversight in this process, through the process, that would be appropriate to have an open, transparent process about what is discussed as we move forward. But the one thing I see is that instead of having an open discussion, it's going to a department, which not necessarily is transparent. What's the other benefit? Why would we do it through department, not committee?
Part of the issue, Councilman Michael Graham, for the record, was the timing of this. We've already been in conversations with the Personnel Department. They were part of the meeting we had yesterday with all the various bargaining units. But to make sure that this doesn't continue to be discussed in committee for the sake of further discussion on items that the city has experience working through on the labor issues as well as the personnel issues, working with the department heads.
So you're saying...
As well as the personnel issues, working with the department heads.
So
but the time...
That, all that to say that we were in a rush to get this through?
Not necessarily. Motion is we have a lot of ideas and a lot of moving pieces, and that we'd like to be able to, I believe the expertise in those areas was made that we'd like to be able to see this move forward and the details worked out with the people with the expertise.
Hi, Council.
Can we do that through committee and not necessarily through the department?
Attended a building. I'm in Jason Clean, Office of the CEO. The Personnel Department has not reviewed the classification for the superintendent classification, so they have not weighed in on whether or not it would be appropriate to utilize the existing classification or whether or not a new report back on what should be utilized to fulfill this purpose. So we've requested that the Personnel Department actually look into this matter. At the moment, they would report what the appropriate means would be.
And who would they get a report back to?
Of the decision back to the Budget and Finance Committee.
So what we're doing essentially, and just for you as chair, Mr. Plum, we've taken a lot of coming back to Plum, making out of this committee, and it's going to rest now, I believe, in the Budget and Finance Committee, unless the final plan is chart, all those other things. Is the final decision coming back to Plum, the final organizational
The updates to the Plum.
things that we've requested?
Michael Graham, for the record, I believe we agreed to give either monthly or quarterly. This would all be before the committee as is implemented. But the decisions, the ordinances that would actually further implement for the Plum Committee, that actually would create this department. So the budget mechanism wouldn't come back before this condition, but any unresolved items, the Budget and Finance, like they do many times, can forward it back to committee or in this committee on the plan. The ordinances that would actually establish this department in the administrative code would come back before the and zoning and building matters.
Councilman, if that is the intent, that needs to be specifically a report that I have rated as part of the committee report, because
I think it's not in there yet.
it's not as the draft committee to Budget and Finance reviewed clearly states that recommendations 1 through 5 from last week were to be referred
request
committee,
and that's how that was stated.
That's
so,
right.
We would have to
or
like that before the final adoption of any ordinances that it come back to Plum.
If that is your policy,
Councilmember Weed
recommendation.
I would second that. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Lee, this report that you have before you is current event unscheduled for council on May 7th. So on May 7th, there will be an opportunity for you to set this correct.
For you, but
Okay, because right now we only have 2 items, correct? No.
No, the whole file is before.
We're going to do it now.
The whole file is before
Yeah.
you. However,
We could amend it now.
Do it now.
You can do it now.
Yeah, that is
An hour.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can do it.
Okay, and at least that gives this committee
Mr. Correct.
opportunity to review. I mean, I would have liked to see the Personnel Committee review this. Who's the chair of that committee? Work with Personnel. Mr. Koretz. Well, leave it up to him to see what he wants to do. But I think that they will leave it up to him. Matters all the time, and they're familiar with it, and he provides some good oversight. But thank you for. Can I ask another question?
Please.
What I'm trying to figure out is, thank you, we're going to record, letting us know. Thank you. Thank you. If we are requesting through a consultant who provide us a report, develop an organizational chart, and budget items, and we're going to get those back at some point and adopt that, how is it that we are now adopting ordained or predetermined through personnel items through and positions in budget? It seems like it's already where it's already determined what that organizational chart will be. So we're not really analyzing this through the consultant process.
Be worked out.
Predetermined.
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilman Mike LeGrand. For the record, a lot of the details, so we make sure we don't, in terms of organizational charts, sphere of management control, utilizing the consultant layers, and have, for example, one principal over 3 people, making sure that we have the right worked out in the details and classifications of people working in this proposed department. So those would all be from the functions that we have looked at come from collective years of experience, not only from what are the department heads, but also from the mayor's office and working on development reform, looking at received on area. A lot of the areas, also our strategic plan has kind of outlined many of the stakeholder input that we were DOT is that would like to see improvement. And so the functions like, for example, moving traffic planning, the same with move planners over into the planning department or this new founded department were received out of that for many years about being subdivision functions into this consolidated department, as well as the conversation that's taken place. Functions have been discussed consolidating the 2 larger departments of building and safety and city planning. So a lot of those have been those functions for many years. The exactly how we get there is what the consultant will be focusing on.
In the budget process, how many positions are you creating, eliminating?
33 new. Perhaps the CAO can speak to that, but I have basically there'll be a total of 30 positions from both positions added.
33 positions added.
Correct.
New positions.
33 new positions together from all the departments combined as part of this new city planning development process. When all the changes are in fact combined workforce, consolidated department is proposed to be 65 positions larger than building and safety and planning forward versus in the current year. And again, that's separate. Both have separate budget requests moving forward. These positions weren't just created for this purpose, but were created as both of our individual budgets are merged together.
Positions created. I just wanted to clarify that point. When you say 33 positions, saying in addition, you're not speaking to positions moved from other departments to this one.
So independent
to the positions being moved from one department to the next.
Correct.
Plus 33.
Correct. All of these are new. The proposed consolidations, both building and safety and planning, are adding positions by a total of more than 30 positions.
Okay, but it seems to me, since you already have the number of positions that you need or want, that there's already a predetermined idea of what that organizational chart will look like.
No, I see where you're going, and that is true, that there is an idea of setting up this frame, in years, an ideal structure to begin this process. Over time, the council may fit to this framework, that there's other items that can be added to this. We've heard from stakeholder groups various items they'd like to see added. We wanted to take on only what we felt we could accomplish, and deliverable measures could be if this model is to get instituted. So this is the beginning of a process that can be added to over time. Is successful over time.
Okay, my final 2 questions on this item. So, about all these, point will we, as a Plum Committee, be able to see the organizational chart and what was created?
Mike LeGrand, Director.
Movement around through the budget process. Is that when the ordinance comes back to us?
Plum Committee on planning, or any time you would like, as soon as it's completed and we're working with the consultant, I'd be happy to report back to the commissioner. We don't have enough progress. Monthly updates if you like, or quarterly, whatever. I can start with monthly, and then if you determine that that's too much information, developed progress, I can come back and just brief the committee monthly on the progress we're making, and as soon as those org charts are developed,
Do you have monthly?
present them here for your input and the constituents' input.
And did we amend it at the last time?
Not there.
Our quarterly report backs?
Not in the draft report that I reviewed. It's
We could add as well, in addition to the previous motion, that we should have quarterly report backs. And finally, I just want to this committee on the process of the development of this new department. And cannot do what we were summarized for the firefighter position. So legally, we intending to do initially, is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Be most appropriate that
The position's over? And then we also received a letter today from...
is that who'd be CAO, or is that you, Michael? Who would be most appropriate to answer that question?
I'd probably ask the CAO to speak to that. They have a point of view on this.
Agreement on whether or not. Jason Clean, Office of the CAO again. There's just requesting that the charter actually mandates that the fire chief be responsible for the plan check function. We are on this matter. They supply us with their reference in the charter so we can look into this further and seek the city attorney's opinion of fire department. As it relates to the state mandate issues, it's an interpretation of whether or not this function cannot be moved over, but we disagree with that interpretation. The question about city plan civilian functions within the fire department can be moved over to the building and safety department and then to the consolidated fire department and development department. We do not believe there's an issue with that. There's a question about whether or not those does need to continue to do some level of review from a sworn perspective on the fire plan check budget process. Positions could be restored through the budget process, and I believe Mr. Legrand was alluding to that through the budget and the Budget and Finance Committee. I know they're working with the mayor's office about restoring those positions.
Okay, so the thought is right now that until that issue gets resolved, we either Budget and Finance Committee, as is, or authority, well, they will decide whether, after they receive a legal opinion, whether they leave or move them over to the new department.
I believe there's support in allowing the building and safety will be done through the planning, the city planning and development department to manage the function. It's just whether or not that
Thank you.
the transfer of the positions as they are put in the proposed budget, or whether that be through an MOU.
Good
afternoon.
Yeah. Welcome, Chief.
Charter committee members. Brian Cummings, Fire Chief of the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. Not only does the State Fire Marshal's give us responsibility and accountability for these plan checks, but also the Fire Code and the State Fire Office. And there's on the committee's website, there's a letter that rests with me. Marshall sent down outlining exactly why, how that responsibility and accountability, and in conversations with both planning and building and safety, remain idea of working with an MOU where the inspectors and the plan checkers to members of this department, and they are co-located with this new department. This is a developer. Carry about that function because we fully support making sure that we're moving this process forward for the visibility issue. Having that works for the department, and it also it solves that accountability. Is not members that are assigned to another department making decisions that ultimately I'm accountable for.
Thank you, Chief.
A situation that I find tenable or legal.
Is that it's important to get all perspectives here on that particular matter. What I feel confident in is the notion of, as we go through the MOU, we're going to make sure that we don't violate any of these laws and reinforce Vega, who's our life safety. I do want to take a moment and acknowledge Mr. Jaime, as I've tried with the Director of Department of Transportation, and offer the opportunity, sir, to come to the microphone, perspective on this, the other department heads who are involved, to make sure that there's input from the department heads and get your and in relation to how personnel from area departments are being viewed,
LADOT,
reconsidered for this new department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jaime de la Vega. The department does support the consolidation. I think what's most important about the consolidation is as location of all the different functions, improve communication, and making sure that the new general manager has the affected department management control and authority over all the different aspects. But like the fire chief stated, I think many transfer through an elements outside of building and safety and planning can have that functional and management issues, which MOU, a memorandum of understanding. There are some workforce which my staff has identified in this process. I think they're parallel in some of the other departments as well in the new department. Namely, if you did a functional transfer of a limited number of our engineers, you'd essentially pigeonhole them once at all department, and it would limit their future training and promotional opportunities. If the committee wants to offer Jay Kim from my staff to provide some further details on the workforce issues.
Good afternoon, council members.
Might as well put on the record.
Technical work in traffic. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. The one of the concern is that we do various planners and civil engineering, and if we are to be sent to this bigger department and see of putting them in that location, you're really pigeonholing their career paths. Further, and get those different, they're really not going to be able to compete at DOT because they're not going to get the opportunity to rotate position and assignment opportunities. So in essence, you're going to be really kind of locking them into a certain
in the rotation for the personnel,
essentially pigeonholing their careers.
So you're seeking flexibility.
We're for.
How should they end up in this particular?
I think there's a way to achieve sort of both common objectives. I think we understand the frustration from development reform, and I think one of the concerns is that we do want to offer better service experience. By us, the development community, they do want to sort of go through one portal, and they want that different customer experience. As part of this new locating and having presence and being the face of DOT work, just a newly developed department, I think we can provide that, but the bulk of our work is reviewing traffic studies, looking back a little bit, is really the day-to-day stuff that my staff does, engineers. For example, looking at traffic mitigations, and that detailed work has to be done amongst other traffic. Alone cannot do that. If I have to impose a traffic signal condition on a development project, I group the designer to come back to DOT, which means that I have to work with signals timing with those engineers and traffic operations group. So bulk of our time spent is really and put us over here, and that needs to get vetted with other engineers. If you pluck us, it's going to create another bureaucratic layer that I'm afraid will only add to the time the other way. And I think overall objective is to actually provide a better streamlined service. It's sort of going in the same manner as to address that issue. If we can be set up where I think the fire chief just mentioned about having this kind of a different departments, but if we're allowed an MOU type of department where our presence is still felt, we are coordinating with other departments. We need to kind of maintain that. How to work, kind of like the relationship we do have is in the details, and to get our work done. And I think that's sort of what we're asking for, is that the devil is specific issues. We want to be part of this, but we just want to be considered for those specific.
I thought it was important to have that on the record, and that devil keeps coming back. But
yes, thank you.
The fact, I believe, to this committee, how we move forward is going to be critical, but it's important in understanding those details. I don't believe we have the answer yet of expanding to flush this out now. So as we go through this conversation and this dialogue, we already know. Or contracting roles, identifying functions that we factor in with the professional, and that's what I'm hoping.
Yes.
And that is the layer that has to begin to fold into this conversation. What will technology we can do? The other X factor is the technology. It's something I believe we're going to go through an RFP. We have to offer when we bring in that expertise and that performance standards and all the P process and those types of function titles and technological advancement issues you're addressing will hopefully be hand in hand with so that we can be more efficient, that this new equipment will hopefully help us use. And I just taking it. That's the ideal. We need to take this step, and time in a very general way, I've been in the National League of Cities. City is towards investment. Again, it comes to me how notorious and unfriendly this over and over again. In the Southern California Association of Governments with 89 cities, that's repeated to me, that impression, that image. We know how hard we work. We know how hard we try, but we got to get away from about getting results, and it happens with results. So I believe that's what this effort is. I've made this statement. I'm glad.
Yes,
So
and we want to be part of that effort.
again, it's important for you to have, and I want to, Mr. De La Vega came to the podium.
Thank you.
Otherwise, we would not have had that opportunity. So thank you, sir. Budget and Finance has all the answers. Welcome our council colleague, the Honorable Councilman Mitchell Glinder, who just came from
The issue is having a very strong.
the money. Okay.
Yes, if I could just wrap up on this, Mr. Chair. I think really what that would mean for long chain of command over all the different development functions that can be accomplished through an MOU. Staff for purposes of work, say, for example, is the new general manager would have authority through that MOU over Jay and his current organizational structure is schedules, the assignment of work, review of their work. Right now, the disadvantage of the staff. So anytime is the only entity that can bring all the departments together is the mayor or the mayor's office. That's sort of the structural problem, but the disagreement or.
May I say that again?
So, right, so that within the city structure. By doing the consolidation, you get past that, so there's a single point of accountability.
Has the ability to bring in department.
Both the
Mr.
mayor
De
and
Vega, I'm going to disagree with you. I think every council member, right, the mayor has the power and heads to work out solutions in as much as the mayor does.
No, I agree with
Granted, your way a little heavier, but hard to hire and fire department heads. And it probably does, that sword hanging over our heads, probably does. I want to make that very clear because the fact is we're all accountable as elected officials to our constituency. So we need to keep that council member, chairs a committee, and we approve the budget. So I think
it's centralized point of
in
accountability.
perspective.
No, I agree with that, sir. And I think just to clarify my statement, the consolidation provides and general managers, you go to one accountability for you and your colleagues as well, rather than your staff trying to herd, 5 or 10.
Thank you, sir.
General manager and say, this is the issue we want addressed.
Right.
Thank you.
Roberto, in terms, would you like to make an observation or a statement, sir? Because I think we're ready. Well, first I want to offer my colleague,
Great, thank you very much. And I was listening in.
Take some steps. Push a button.
Everybody coming out on this, and Mr. Chin before I walked in as well, trying to wear dual hats. So I appreciate and looking at it in light of a lot of what we've heard and your support on this as well and moving forward. I think the details are in and it keeps coming back that the devil's in the details, frankly, and the success is actually in the details. The devil's in the current process. The rubber does meet the road. That's where the real. So, although that's where, because it has to be done, and that's what we approved. Questions need to be asked and answered, and I fully support that. Consultant for the implementation plan, working with. In fact, in this very committee last week, was bringing on a unique, as others have indicated as well, that every single department. There are some departments, as the fire department, is things that, or an MOA. Those are things need to be considered. May require perhaps an MOU of structure. Those are that, Mr. Chair. What I'd like to do is considered and looked at and ironed out as well. But so with a couple changes is that the review present a motion to move those remaining items forward in coordination with both the general manager, the full review of the implementation plan that the consultant will be working with the chair of Plum of the planning department, which is what we approved last week, but also to be so that as that implementation plan is moving to be included in that working group, which I think is critically important. Of the consolidating forward, it's both the general manager together, and then that implementation plan come back to this committee, if you will, new department and the chair of the committee, work committee. That would be my motion. for full review, as well as quarterly reports back to this.
Cut of the review process. Now, when do you see the first
Because
process occurring?
time, but as you know, in City Hall, the clock seems to. As a timeline, we have a little bit of slower than we like. What we'd like to do is take a little bit differently. Things go quicker than you expect, and sometimes again work selecting, working with, looking at our right immediately after the adoption by councils, being start that work, but immediately after council on-call contracts, looking at the various options to bring on a consultant would take place immediately. So a lot of this work, adoption, many items like the discussions with the labor trades council and the budget deliberations, that work would begin immediately. Would follow the action of the council, assuming this is approved by the full city.
Other stakeholders will participate. The labor trades and all the action to make sure that the concerns raised in today's meeting, once we initiate the reconfiguration,
I've been waiting to have all staff.
Today's meeting will be addressed.
Correct. Another good example, all department-wide meetings, those type meeting with my staff, we've raised this in concept that the past two makers of city council will be able to go back to the depths of discussions once we have additional guidance from the policy, able to go over these details, and I think allay a lot of people's field staff and talk to them in smaller working groups, have brown bag luncheons to be employees.
Okay. And
years and show them a lot of the opportunities that we can see that are ahead for the
into this committee. As Roberto, in terms of the folding back raised earlier, in reference to our proposed by Councilman Englander, does that take care of the concern Councilman Weezer?
Yes, and now it'll be denoted in the committee.
Viewing and being part of the decision-making process.
Committee, as far as the implementation plan, it will report that there will be quarterly updates to the plum, and it will also include the consultant. It will be reviewed. It will include the chair of this committee. So a couple of as part of that review process. There's also a department as to the director of buildings. I think issues as far as the concern expressed by the fire attorney. I don't know if you still want to proceed with that. I think at one point it was stated they were seeking an opinion from the city
consultant to look at that and look at various options in terms of.
Yes, please.
If I could, we just would ask that can be ironed out in part of the implementation, but that what could be an MOU or different functions, that attorney's office as well.
And
the consultant work directly to address those concerns, working with the city attorney.
Recommendation number 4 from last. And then I think there was another concern expressed as far as will be done by the personnel department versus the person last week, whether the report back will be to, we resolve that? Okay. Okay, the committee, and I think Mr. Weezer brought that up. Very good. Okay. And then I think the department.
Take it back to the department. Okay. Anything else you want to add, Councilman Weezer?
You have the directive. You will read, Council.
All right. Anything? Michael, anything else you wanted to ask? No.
Yes, and thank all the stakeholders from the neighboring. Thank you. I'd like to thank the committee for their focus on the trade organizations and the development community, as councils, the homeowners associations, to the church in Los Angeles, as well as the employees of the department for embracing change and looking to a bright future.
Okay. So, committee sees this again. Will it be before or after? When the chair of this committee,
that my unfettered respect for the
July 1st.
Should come back before July 1st. Current chair of the Plum Committee, I'll make sure to have our first presentation.
Don't try too hard. Do you really have to?
June 30th.
All right, folks. So, Roberto, can we move forward? Okay, I'm having too much fun here.
Council members will be to adopt recommendation.
And give us the directives for the action of this committee.
2013 Planning, Department of Building and Sections 1 through 5 in the joint April 5th, 3rd, and also recommendations 6 and 7, safety report as amended by your committee on April 20 amendments that were stated by Mr. Englander as discussed at today's meeting, in addition to the
Does encapsulate everything we said today. Okay.
yourself and Mr. Weezer.
Okay, so that's, I believe you. Thank you so much. So that would be the action of this committee. I have a second and a third. I'll say yes.
Public comment, Council.
Anybody here for public comment? All right. Anything else?